Welcome back to another episode of the Strength and Speed Podcast. I'm your host, Motor Gear Hannibal Race Pro and Strength and Speed owner, Evan Perperis. I got 3 guests with me on the line today. Before we get to them, though, a quick word from this episode's sponsor. This episode is brought to you by The Feed. If you haven't checked out The Feed, please check it out. I'm going to drop a link down in the show notes below. Please click through that link. It's like the supplement superstore for everything endurance, right? So any sort of fueling product you want to try, what's really cool is it's not just one brand, so you can pick like a gel from this brand, a powder from this brand, and a recovery product from another brand. So they also have Hammer Nutrition there. I still use them. Hammer Nutrition is my primary fuel source, but the 2 big things I like getting from The Feed additionally are casein protein, is a slow digesting protein used to build muscle overnight while you sleep. And the other thing I like to get is a pre-workout that has more caffeine than Hammer Nutrition, because Hammer Nutrition is meant for endurance. It's not meant for like supercharge of energy. So go over and check out The Feed. I'm going to drop a link down in the show notes below. Also drop some discounts codes for some other stuff, Mud Gear, Yoked, some of the other longtime sponsors of the podcast. All right, let's get to today's episode. We've got 3 guests on the line with me. They are my team from Toughest Mudder East, Toughest Mudder Philly. Let's introduce them one by one, learn a little bit more about them. Start off with Christian Brown Johnson, who we had on the podcast, I don't know, the last couple of months. Time seems to fly. When was the last time I had you on, Christian?
Yeah, I think it was a few months ago.
Okay. So not too long ago. 2-time 100-mile finisher at World's Toughest, multiple-time top 5, I believe. Give us a little bit of rundown of some of your athletic accomplishments here.
Yeah, so 8-time World's Toughest Mudder finisher, 200-mile finishes, I believe 4 or 5 first place age group finishes, 5th place twice when I did both 100 miles. And then I have a 95-mile finish as well, where I took 7th. Outside of that, toughest team first place finishes, I believe this last weekend was my 5th. I've also done 3 Ironmans and the Drift 101 sled pull snow race. And outside of that, a plethora of other OCR races and triathlons.
Yeah. Our second teammate here is Chris Miko, or Mikojewlski. How did I pronounce? How did I do it? How did I do it?
Perfectly. Mikojewski, just like it's spelled, Evan.
Mikojewski. Okay. So I wasn't close. That's okay. Chris, give us a rundown of your bio.
Yeah, so 5-time WTM finish, 5 or 6, I don't even know anymore. They kind of blend together. Multiple toughest. I think Christian just beat me because he's got 5 team first places. Will be my 4th team first place finish. And then just background is a lot of backyard ultras. My personal best there is a 30 hours there. Bunch of 50-mile trail races, a lot of ultra endurance, more trail running, long distance running kind of stuff for me, and multiple OCRs. I know, Evan, you did, we'll get there later with 100 podiums. I think I've done 100 OCRs, or I'm somewhere about there. So that's really kind of impressive. I was thinking about that this morning.
All right. And our third teammate, Ryan Ardigo. Ryan, give us a rundown.
Yeah, I've been doing OCR now 5, 6 years maybe, so not as long as everyone else, but this 4 WTM finishes, silver bibs last 3 years, 85 miles in Alabama was my best so far, so I'd like to top that later this year. Toughest, have had a bunch of age group podiums there. I think overall podium one year I got on because you haven't ran as a team that year instead, so that opened up a spot. And usually I can top our age group because that's when you're on the overall podium. So, so I've been doing the toughest events last few years, so. And then like everyone else, mix in other events here and there, whether it's ultra trail races or some of the other OCR events. Although I haven't done as many of those in a few years, but yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about Toughest Philly today. This was the team I assembled. Looked like it was going to be my 100th podium. I wanted to make it a guarantee. So I essentially I did the Avengers Assemble thing and assembled the All-Stars that are my friends, and always finishing, plus or minus a couple of places of me. And this is the team that came out. And I was, luckily I got basically first pick of everyone I asked. So I was super excited. So let's start off with Christian. You've done a whole bunch of these. What was different about Toughest Philly?
So the new relay format was a little bit of a game changer. Having it where you can have 2 to 4 teammates for a team, no separate 2 or 4 man teams. It's a little bit different. I think obviously if you have 4 people, you have a little more advantage over anyone with 2 or 3 people. But it was fun. The relay format, it was the only thing that really sucked about it was having to sit around for a few hours at a time. But it definitely opens up some more room for higher mileage as a team overall. The Philly course is great. Second time I've run this course, and nice and hilly, nice and muddy. I like that they put in the cool little creek, creek crossings, I guess, throughout the beginning of the course. But overall, obstacles were good. They innovated a little bit differently this year. And then having a little bit of rain come in around 3 a.m. Definitely changed some things up for people. But good race.
Yeah. So you mentioned it kind of briefly. The big rule change was you only had to have one person on the course at a time, which normally you need 50% of the team or 2 people. I can't remember what the exact wording was previously. But essentially, so you could, the first and last lap were still together, but all the middle ones you could do one person. So Chris, with the rule change, did you like the longer breaks and faster laps? Or give me some thoughts on that. If it's cool, if it's stupid, should they go back, etc.
Yeah, I think I was talking to the race director about this. I can't remember if you were standing there,
I was
but
saying that for part of it, yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting format, the change. I think it took away from the competitiveness because the whole thing used to be teamwork, right? You kind of got there and you and your running partner kind of teamworked through some of the obstacles, and it just brought that tough mudder kind of spirit to it. Where this way it was more like just throw down miles. I mean, we were all going out there at dead sprints, right? That was just something new. Normally, when I've done these before, I'm sure you guys did the same, right? Where it's you go out there, but you kind of still got to pace yourself because
Yeah.
it was 1 lap on, 1 off. Now 1 on, 3 off. It's essentially you're starting pretty much recovered. So that was kind of fun to actually throw down some fast laps, but I don't know. I would like the other way better.
Ryan, what do you think?
Yeah, and I agree. It was fun being able to go out there and run at the paces we were running at. Flying by everyone. They're looking at us like we're crazy. But yeah, especially that the first mile and the last mile when things really opened up and were runnable. When you could see, not at 3 a.m. in the morning when the rain started. But yeah, I like that. It was definitely fun on sprinting around. To get to Everest, and when I was trying to get to Arctic Enema, 5 seconds before it was opening, I was on lap number 4 overall for us. So it's definitely fun being able to do some of that, which you're normally not going to do, trying to sprint by an obstacle in the middle of a race if you're doing the full 12. We didn't, of course, didn't care for the long breaks, but then I think we all said it was kind of cool actually just seeing what life was like in the pit and at the hospitality tent, the fire pits there where I know CBJ spent a lot of time at. So it was nice seeing like the rest of the atmosphere there that we're usually not a part of, and except for before and after the race and the short pit stops we usually do.
Yeah, as someone who's been around for a while, I liked the change only because it was something different from what I've experienced. So I liked those long breaks, and I liked being able to run. I was essentially running at a pace that I would run for a 5-mile OCR. Like I was running almost max effort, slightly below that, but I was running hard. I mean, when I'm taking turns, I'm like taking them wide because I can't stay on the path. Like that's how fast I'm running, and people are like going, I'm running by people and they're like gasping. So that was really cool. It was cool to like run Tough Mudder like that because, I mean, even when Tougher was around, it was still 10 miles, right? So you still had to pull back a little. So I've never run a Tough Mudder at that speed before. That was kind of cool. But as I kind of like Chris, like you mentioned, I like the old way of like actually having to pace and strategize, and like you and your teammate had to be a good match. Like I ran with you at one of the toughest, and we were a good match. But if you're one guy's super fast and one guy's super slow, it's you got to play that teamwork a little bit better.
Yeah, and the other thing this weekend was like the obstacles, they were just the standard. I mean, they made a couple small tweaks, but there wasn't really a good teamwork obstacle, right? Like I was talking with Joe Herman I don't even know because days are blurring, but like how there was no Dublin walls and no need for him there, right? Where you kind of would have your partner help you over some stuff like that.
Yeah. So yeah, we
So-
mentioned a couple of the innovations. We'll go to Christian first. Tell us about one of the obstacles that was different, because for me there was like two obstacles that really stood out as something unique compared to previous Tough Mudders.
Yeah. Ladder to Hell, they had basically put up a wooden wall on the front side, almost fully to the top with ropes hanging down. And I remember when that first opened, and I got there, I jump up and grab the rope, and the rope's just soaking wet, and the wall's wet. And you try to latch your feet onto it, and you're just sliding down. So it's definitely a lot challenging for people that can't get themselves pulled up there. So that's where some of that teamwork definitely comes into play for something like that, for most of the participants out there. But yeah, definitely a lot more difficult than just climbing up those rungs.
Yeah, the rope was surprisingly slippery. Ryan, tell me a little bit about the you mentioned it already, Arctic Enema, the other one that was kind of, I think, was the biggest point of discussion.
Yeah, no, that one. I mean, like I said, I was thrilled. I got to be the last one to run by it without having to go in it. And then, as one by one, you saw people coming out of there, shivering, running to the fire pit because you had to jump in, duck under the wooden, wall, and then when you came out, though, they had a cage, kind of like cage crawl, a fence, so you had about maybe 5-6 inches, maybe, to breathe. And that was about 10 feet long, let's say, before you then had to go underneath another wall to then get out of and then use the cargo net to get out of there. Yeah, a lot of people banging their heads when they were coming up, shivering, on the fence there. It definitely was for me, I know it's definitely the worst one I've been in before. Coming up as the ice is on top of your head, you get that brain freeze. But I think a lot of people all said the same thing. Though it was nice. Right after that, you got to go in Mud Mile, and it made that water feel like bath water, compared to it.
That's a good point. That's a good point. So the Miko, you've been to a lot of these, and Christian, we've all been to a lot of these. Talk to me, whoever wants to go, about the number of people that were at this one compared to some of the other ones, and any kind of thoughts you have on that.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot less than most of the races I've been to. I don't know. What do you think there was? 200 people or less?
So we counted. There was 250 registered athletes on live tracking. It doesn't mean more didn't sign up and not show up, but as far as like people on course, at max when they said go and everyone started, there was 250 people on course. That includes individual team members.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a pretty small event for toughest. And like Ryan mentioned earlier, and you as well, I spent a lot of time around the fire pit in between laps because I wasn't smart like you guys and changed clothes after each lap. So I needed some warmth, but it was cool to talk to all these other people that were first timers, or was their first time, running a Tough Mudder race. And yeah, it was just good to get involved with that side of the community. But a lot of these people came out with these hefty goals, and surprisingly, they got cold. And like Arctic Enema seemed to be the biggest nemesis of most of these first timers. They just got so cold. They came in and sat by the fire pit and got comfortable and just entered their race after 2 or 3 laps. And that was a little surprising to see, because going into a race like this, I assume most people would mentally prepare themselves for 12 hours and say, look, I'm going to embrace the suck and keep pushing. And I kept trying to be everyone's biggest motivator over there by the fire pit, and kept telling people, hey, just go out for one more. Like, you're going to warm up again. Don't worry about it. But so many people just dropped out after 2 or 3 laps, which I was kind of disappointed to see that.
What's also funny is they're probably like, who is this guy giving me advice?
Yeah.
They have no idea who you are. And it's like, you should probably listen to him. He knows a thing or two.
He's been standing here for 3 hours not running, and he's telling me to go get out on course.
Right. Yeah. It's like they don't know your resume. I just think that's really funny. So
yeah, well, why do you think that is? Like, because even Arctic being at the end, right? You did Arctic, you did Mud Mile, and then the 20 squats at EST. I think I only saw a handful of people go through there. But then you got back out on course, and it was pretty much a good mile and a half, right? Ish run before you got wet again. And even then, it
Yeah.
was just the creek. So, like, I know for us, right, I would always start and I would be dying by the time I got to that creek. Granted, we were moving faster. So it kind of was set up like, yeah, well, you were going to get cold, but you should have kept moving and warmed back up a little bit.
I think people show up to 12-hour races not expecting to have to go like deep into the pain cave, especially of like the coldness cave. So like mentally they are not prepared for it. And then when they do get cold, and again, it's supposed to be in the summer, right? So they're like mentally not ready to be cold. Two, I don't think they bring the right equipment again because they're not expecting to be cold, so they don't bring the appropriate changes of clothes. And then for this one specifically, I think three, Arctic Enema was near the end, and there was essentially very little running between the end and the start of your next lap. So people would get cold in Arctic Enema. They wouldn't start running again. They would walk into the pit, and they were still cold from Arctic Enema. And he was like, well, if you haven't started running again, then you're not going to warm up. So
Yeah, that's what was surprising to me because you're cold when you get out of Arctic Enema for a good 10-20 seconds, but then your body just warms up like immensely.
yeah,
So it was surprising for me to see people stay, so cold in that short distance from Arctic to the pit. And, it's like, hey, just embrace that warmth feeling you have right now, even though your body's trying to fight off this immense cold that you just experienced, and just keep running. Just run through the start line again and get back out there. But I think so many people just mentally weren't prepared for that level of cold through Arctic and just felt the need to go sit by a fireplace and warm up.
Brian, what's your
I think that
advice?
I was saying,
Go for it.
yeah, that long walk between the finish and the start line, I think, had a lot of people then thinking, and then they look over, they see the fire pit, they see the pits, and they're like, oh man, the starting line's still all the way up that hill. I think I'll go over here. And that's something I think we can talk about later on. That the course is all that extra distance you had in between the finish and start. There was something that hurt the individuals running more than did us and the team.
Right.
But definitely had those people gave them time to think about going back out for another one.
Yeah, tell people about where the start line was compared to the finish.
Yeah, I didn't clock it if it was, I'll say maybe quarter mile, maybe.
Yeah, I would say it was a quarter mile.
So
it was far.
But you're going through Mudder Village and then walking under Mudderhorn, and then you got the long stretch where you can see the start line up there, but then you got all the pits on the left side of you there. So I definitely strategically what we did, on our team here, which I think a lot of people saw us doing it when they saw a crazy person sprinting through the through the pit there, was we'd hand it off to someone on the team to go, hand it to whoever the next person was to go out there, just to save that little bit of energy. Which was kind of funny to watch people stare at us sprinting through there. But that definitely was if you're running solo though, that's a lot of extra distance there that those guys had to cover.
Yeah, it counts for nothing. So
that counts for nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, not conducive to high mileage. And then you add in the two kind of swamp movements they had, also not conducive for high mileage. So yeah, it was a rough one. It was a rough one to get good mileage on that course. I think the male winner only had 50, and elite's supposed to be 55. And it's not like the guys who were on the podium were like slouches. Those are all top dudes, So
yeah. Well, historically, this course has always been hard with the elevation and the terrain too, right? Where if you look at the mileage, even from like the Infinities and Toughest from Philly compared to like a Chicago, right? It's like night and day.
That's a good point.
Yeah, last year when they did Infinity here, so when they did Toughest here several years back, I remember it was hilly, but not, I wouldn't say it stood out. And then when they did Infinity last year, they used every hill on this venue, and then this year they definitely used a lot of them. I was actually comparing what my Strava was this year to last year, and you see a lot of where all the repeats are, and then the sections that they didn't reuse. But they definitely used a lot of elevation that are not conducive to high mileage, and of course that what they call Swamp Crusade, whatever they were calling it there. Your long hike through the that stream. Definitely what's going to slow you down. I think we all took the same approach though. It's like in that first mile, go all out knowing you're going to have to slow down for a good half mile there.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes just from experience racing, and understanding energy expenditure and where to push and where to coast and where, where you should not coast or where you should not push because maybe, sharp turns and, you know, slow movement through swamps or whatever that may be. So any other, let's see, what else? Any other final thoughts on Toughest Philly? I guess we mentioned earlier, but I this was my 100th podium, right? So, I guess why did you guys decide to come out and to run this one? We can push that over to whoever.
I love getting the call from me about it. I mean, I was dealing with injury, and I knew back in the winter, so obviously my endurance was not going to be there to do 12 hours. And when you said let's do team, and then saw what the new format was, it's like, oh, this is great. What 4 or 5 laps maybe. But then just the fact to be on a team, with the 3 of you, I was like, oh man, this is all-star lineup. I get to be a part, join these guys. I was honored to be there, with you, getting 100 podiums. I'm nowhere near even 100 races for that matter. It was honored to be out there with you and on the course. Another highlight, I would say, not to take it away from your accomplishment there, it was awesome having Sean Corbell, by the way, back at the start.
Oh yeah,
just thought I'd throw that out there. That was something that this weekend that we all unfortunately didn't have, at the end of last year. But just wanted to mention, throw that out there.
No,
that's
good.
Even at the start line, he was there the whole time too. I actually spent a little bit of time in between laps chatting with him. I can't remember the last time I actually saw him.
Yeah, he was gone. He wasn't at any of the toughest or worlds last year, and it felt like something was missing. It was not the same. So
yeah.
Go for it.
It was good. It was good to see him back out there for sure. And even before we walked away, after the podium ceremony, that one random guy walked up and basically spilled his heart out to Sean, and it was cool to see that. Because that guy even mentioned, he's only done maybe 4 or 5 Tough Mudders, but just how impactful Sean was to that one person, really shows a lot in how strong this community is. Even though this race was a lot smaller than it typically is, we still see, we still saw a lot of the same people that we typically see when we go to events. So I think the community is still strong, and holding pretty well. But it was good to see Sean back and see Clinton there as well too. It's always good to see that guy.
Yeah, they're so nice and they're so motivating. I can't say enough good things about them. Miko, you've been around for a while too. Any concern you have with the smaller numbers at this event and like the future? Like, do you again, just kind of spitballing here, any concern that they'll get rid of Toughest or something like that?
I don't know. It's kind of a weird question just because the numbers were lower, right? Like, I don't know what used to be, right? 700-800 people. Like the first year when I think it was in Michigan, it had to be 700 or 800 people there. That place was packed. I mean, it almost looked like a real, normal Tough Mudder Saturday, and it was at 8 p.m. coming in. So, I hope they continue it. But even I was talking with Sean about it too a little bit, because it didn't feel to me like we all kind of agreed, like before, the vibe just felt a little bit off because of, who was there and who wasn't there. But it's a lot of fresh new people coming in, and everybody I talked to said they loved it. I talked to about a half dozen people who were brand new. I met some guy in Blackness, I think my solo lap I went out on, who was in Blackness and just stuck. Like he couldn't get over that block. And it was, I waited for the guy behind me. We got him up and over. We got him over the next block and went on. And I saw him right after he got his medal and checked out. And he was talking to me. He's telling me it's his first toughest, or it was like 3rd Tough Mudder or 4th Tough Mudder, first endurance thing. And he got 3 laps in, and he was happy as hell with it. So, hopefully that continues on and people just keep embracing this and growing from it. Right.
Yeah.
Such a great experience. I think we've all done that, right? Just you've come in, didn't know what to expect, and push through, and find your best. Use that Sean quote.
Absolutely. Well, it was a great experience. I have to again thank all of you for coming out. I know people were dealing with all sorts of. Once you just came off ultras, recovering from injuries, all that stuff. So it meant a lot to have you guys out there, and it was great to have that such a strong team going in, feeling so confident. So a personal thank you from me. I know all three of you have more crazy stuff planned for later this year, so I want to dive into some of the stuff you guys have planned. First, since I have you on, Christian, give me some thoughts on Al-Ula, the Saudi Arabia race, because I talked about it on the podcast, but all the listeners just got my take on it. Just give me a quick rundown on kind of some of your thoughts from traveling out to Saudi.
I thought it was incredible. I mean, one of the best trips I've ever had in my life. Before going out there, we were getting all these people that were saying, "Oh, don't go out there. There's a war zone nearby." X, Y, and Z, whatever. Everyone was throwing everything at us, and I get out there. We actually ended up in Dubai for a couple days prior to going over to Saudi, and that was one of the coolest places I've ever been to, and we had a great experience doing everything we could while we were there. Saudi, the little town Al Ula, was, I mean, in the middle of freaking nowhere. I remember looking out the window and the plane flying in, and I was like, "Where are we landing? There's literally nothing out here." But the people there were great hospitality. The venue was set up off the side of a highway in this big, huge open desert area. But like I said, hospitality was great. The tents were great. The Mudder Village, everyone was excited to be there. You had a lot of locals there, which was good to see. And it's good to see that the government out there was funding this whole deal and funding the prizes, all that money. So it brought athletes, like top elite athletes from everywhere to this event. I mean, so many people showed up. Like I thought it'd be, a handful of elites that showed up, but I think every elite in OCR was pretty much there. And the race was great, super windy, but it was a challenging course to run on, just sand wise in certain sections, but obstacles were very, very small. Wasn't anything that was difficult whatsoever. I mean, I was telling a couple people it's like running in the kids' Mudder, but it's like you couldn't really fail anything whatsoever. But really, really fast course, fast obstacles, just a great experience overall. And I was glad that we were able to bring you on. I know Elliot was feeling not at his best a couple days prior, so he wanted to switch over to solo to try to help the team out a little bit, and we brought you on, and we all ran hard, and we ran the best race we could, and these other three teams that took the top three, I mean, they were ridiculously fast, so it was cool to see a whole different level of competition out there at that race.
Yeah, those teams were really fast, and kind of like Ryan's situation coming into this one, I was super happy that you guys asked me to be on the team. I was like, oh, sweet. Thank goodness. I was like, 'cause I was not in the mood, just not in the mood to run for that long at that point in my training cycle. Because long story short, I wasn't 100% sure if I was going, so I hadn't been quite hammering down like I should have been. I was kind of being like, I still don't know if this is happening. So like, maybe I don't do this. Maybe I cut this run a little bit short today, and more than happy to run for only 5 hours instead of 8. So.
Yeah.
Miko, tell me what you have going on this year.
So out of this, I got a couple big races. I'm doing Vol State 500K at the Journey race, because who does not want to go run across the state of Tennessee in the middle of July? So we start from the west side of the state and have 11 days to pretty much, and you like run east 340 miles or something. So finally get to do that. I got put in for it, got picked my first year, and then I'm doing Barkley Fall Classic after 5 or 6 years of putting in for the lottery. I finally got picked. So those are my two fun ones this year, and then I'm still looking what's going to happen at the end of the year for me.
Doing World's Toughest?
I think it's 80-20 that I'm not right now.
Okay.
So I think it's just a year off from me from that.
Okay. I mean, you do have other big races, so.
Yeah, coming off some big things. It's a lot. large training block, right? You guys do it. Everybody's seen it, right? It's months of time to be at your peak right there. And I think I want to fall off,
Yeah, absolutely.
take some time and go have some fun doing some other dumb things.
Ryan, what do you have coming up?
Yeah, for me, it'll be sticking with the Tough Mudder events. So the toughest Chicago most likely, followed by the Infinity event in Pittsburgh 2 weeks after that, and then WTM in November. So those will be the big ones. We'll see if I can sprinkle anything else in there in between. Most of my life around my kids and their activities and their sports schedules. So we'll see. Maybe a trail race or two in between. Last year I did the Grindstone 100K, out here in Virginia. So still debating about that one. That was a hell of a race. It's fun to do. So
I have friends that are going down to that again this year.
Yeah, that was an awesome event. I mean, the weather was similar to what we dealt with this weekend. I mean, missed rain the entire event. I mean, ton of elevation to get there. I was definitely not prepared for that much elevation last year, but cool event. I thought, it's obviously under the big UTMB umbrella now, but yeah, very very well run, and ton of that. Not crazy at the starting line. You're looking up, you're like, oh wait, those are like a couple of those really big time elite dudes, who are going for like cold tickets and trying to win, make it to UTMB. But there were some guys flying out there. But so we'll see about that one. But yeah, see what else to sprinkle in between. But those are
Nice. Christian, what do you got planned for the rest of the year?
I think in a couple weeks I may jump into a Olympic triathlon. And I get married a week after that, and then a week after that I'm going to pace Jake Ramsby at his first 200-mile ultra at the Tahoe 200. So I'll probably put in about 50 miles there with him. Then doing some traveling this summer. Then after that, nothing really planned just yet. But I got WTM on the schedule, so I'll probably do a big training block for that this year. See if I can improve my placing at this event. And then I'm going to be doing a 70.3 over in Florida in December. So that's pretty much it. And then beginning of next year, I got the Monster 300, the new destination trail race, and that's from the south end of Arizona, just any point-to-point race straight up north. So I'm looking forward to that. I've been wanting to do a big ultra event the past couple of years. I've been pacing all my buddies at their 200 plus mile races, and I figured it's my turn to try one.
Yeah. So I was laughing at the event because there was some people talking to us who are, had never done a Tough Mudder, never done an ultra before, and they're talking to the three of us, and I'm like, we're simultaneously really good people to get advice from, but also like simultaneously the worst, because our scale of like discomfort and distance and like, willingness to go into the pain cave is so skewed compared to the average person. It's just like it just doesn't translate well sometimes. I know one person came by and was like, we're like, yeah, just keep moving. Just, you just got to keep moving. You don't stop. Like whatever, however you're feeling, don't stop. And like, definitely don't go by the fire. And, a lot of people went by the fire and a lot of the people did not come back. So.
Yeah.
One of the funniest moments is when your buddy came to, who was pitting with us.
Yeah.
And he came back shivering, and we're like, all right, we'll give you some advice. Best thing is to keep moving. 10 seconds later, I'm going to the fire pit.
Yeah, he walked over and we're like, he's not coming back. He's not getting back on the course. Yeah.
Yeah, I was sitting over there when he first came by the fire pit. I'm like, what are you doing over here? And he was eating a banana. He's like, oh, I'm cold. And I was like, okay, you're not going to sit here for long. Like, get back out there. And I think an hour or two later, he walks back up fully clothed. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? I'm like, put your stuff back on and get back out there. And he said, no, I'm done. And yeah, one point that you brought up earlier, all these people are talking to us and don't, all these newbies have no idea who we are. And like, I never brought anything up, I think, until we were leaving for our last lap. I was talking, there was a daughter, her dad, her brother, and I think an uncle. So they all came out to run, and so the dad, I was talking to him for a little while, and he had asked me, he's like, oh, like how many of these have you done? Like, what's your experience with this? That was like the first time I had brought anything up to anybody, like of my experience. And as I started telling him, basically my resume, everybody else sitting around the fire just starts staring at me, and they're like, whoa, like that's impressive. And I'm like, yeah, no, it's, it just is what it is. But I said, what you learn from these events is how to deal with discomfort. And, it's such a short period of time. Yeah, looking at it 12 or 24 hours, it seems like a long time. But once you're out there going, it goes by at the snap of a finger. And then you're going to cross that finish line and be done and say, oh, well, I just pushed through that tough event. Now I get to go back to the hotel, get in a hot shower, get a good meal. But I said, just embrace the suck for now. Like it's not that bad. And so many of those people just couldn't comprehend it. But yeah, we've all started from nothing in the sport and built our tolerance up to where it is now. So
Right.
it's understandable to see these people not get back up from the fire and go back out.
Yeah, you don't just show up like that. You'll have to learn at some point along your endurance route. And it's a lot of baby steps until you get to, where the guys on this podcast are today, where it's like, oh yeah,
And
you just don't stop.
I think we can all say, right, that we have made that mistake where we have like, oh, I'm going to take a little break to warm up and end up by the fire and never leave, right?
Yeah.
I know I've done it a couple times and it's never worked well. It's just faster to keep going, right? No. And then you just learn, like, okay, that was stupid, and those are some lessons you just go through as part of this. You don't go from first time out there to podium unless you're just a special athlete. Most of the time, you got to step through it.
Yeah, and typically you've learned that lesson someplace else. It may not be OCR. You learned it at some other race or some other training environment.
All right, Evan, I think we need to start asking you some questions about your 100 podiums.
Okay.
Like we said, it was an honor to be out there with you. But 100 podiums, I'm sure there's some great memories out there, good, bad, and different. But let's start out with the first podium. What was the first one?
So the first one was Warrior Dash way back in, I think it was 2013. I ran a Warrior Dash in the middle of the day and then realized that there was a competitive portion and thought I could be pretty fast. So I went back to the next Warrior Dash and ran in the first wave, won the wave, and then someone later in the day beat my time. So I technically came in second, but when I left, I thought I won. And I was like, oh, I'm pretty good at this. So.
Nice. Well, R.I.P. Warrior Dash. So about the most memorable podium. I know we talked about this one like middle of the night at some point during a break, but I'll throw that one out there to you again.
Yeah, it's hard to pick just one. There's been a lot of, 100, right? There's a lot of good memories. Some of the ones that kind of stand out on my first Conquer the Gauntlet win. I'd been trying to win the gauntlet, like what you actually get for winning Conquer the Gauntlet for, I don't know, I had like 9 podiums at that point. Second, third, and I just couldn't get the stars to align. And in Iowa, things finally kind of panned out and I won. And I was like I'm flying across the line and hug David Main prize. And my dad happened to be, that's the one Conquer the Gauntlet he went to. He happened to be there for it. So it was just like a really cool experience. That's a really memorable one. When my team finished second at North American OCR Championships in the Pro Co-Ed, we did not think we were going to do that well, and we finished one spot behind Ryan Atkins and Lindsey Webster's team. Right, that was a huge one. And then just basically, most of all the toughest podiums, I've got 6 individual toughest, lots of second and thirds, and they're just massive efforts. And my last one in Philly is one that particularly stands out because I think I was in like 4th or 5th going into the final lap, and I just redlined the whole way through. And there's video of me crossing the line, and I am like, someone's recording me, and I have no idea they're recording me. Like, I am out of it. Like, just like I'm staggering, I'm staring at the ground. I don't really like, everything hurts. So those kind of are a couple that stand out. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, you mentioned Conquer the Gauntlet and OCR World Championships. I think one of the things that's impressive with you, and you say it all the time, the grip strength you have, on top of being able to go as long as you do with the endurance. I think, it's something that stands out about about you, by the way. There's a lot of us out there. I know I put myself in the category. I can keep pushing, do the endurance, but I'm failing the grip strength stuff. Halfway through these long events, but you coast through them like they're nothing. That's always extremely impressive, by the way.
I appreciate it.
How did you keep track of all of these? Do you have a spreadsheet that you were?
I did.
You had them all in.
So I started actually putting them on my website at first. And I list them. If you go to my website under the teamstrengthspeed.com, you go to Ultra-OCR Man, click on the athlete link. It'll show by year all my podiums. I started keeping track initially because I wanted to get a bunch so when I wrote my first book, I had something to prove that what I was saying was valid. Be like, well, I have all these podiums. I have 10 podiums. You should listen to me because I kind of know what I'm talking about. So that's kind of why I started keeping track. And then I realized when you're looking for sponsors, it's a good idea to showcase why they should sponsor you. So I started posting them by year on my website to show that not only have I been doing this consistently, but I do well and over a long period of time. And when I list them on the website, I list them from highest to lowest. So they're not chronological besides the year. They're broken by year, but they list from best place to lowest place finish. And that's specifically designed, again, marketing, supposed to influence sponsors to be like, yes, I should sponsor him. And around Podium 50, I told my dad, so it was about 5 years ago, I told my dad, I want to get 100 podiums. And he was like, well, how many do you have? And I was like, I don't know, like 52. And he's like, oh, okay. And then it really became, then I really started keeping track. And then I built the spreadsheet. And then over the last couple years, I started getting worried that like when I turn 40, all my fitness will suddenly magically disappear. So I really started like, and then like brands kept going out of business. So I started getting paranoid. So I just started like, I was like, well, how many races can I do a year and still perform at a decent level? And then I started going to, basically like everything within like that 8-hour bubble of driving. I started just kind of lining them up and, my fitness wasn't at top form, but depending on the race size, it's usually good enough to do well in the smaller local events of, 4 miles and less. And then I kind of peak for the big events like the 12-hour toughest. So,
unless a whole high school cross country team shows up and then you get nervous, you might not podium, right?
Yeah, yeah, we talked about that over the one of the two of the races I did. It was like it's all high school cross country runners, and they were blowing me out of the water for the first mile. I'm in like 7th place. And then we hit obstacles that were not hard, right? And they're hurdles. They're kind of like lumberjacked from Toughest Mudder. And they have 0 upper body strength. Their heart rate can't go back down after they do something that's not normally running. And I squeezed into 3rd at that one. But I was worried about that one in Wichita Falls. So
Nice. I'll give you one more and then I'll let the other guys ask away. But since you call yourself Ultra-OCR Man, how many of those podiums do you put in the ultra category?
Oh, that's a good question. So I broke it down. I'm going to
see how good that spreadsheet is of yours. You can filter it, right?
I have it, but let's see, Zoom is not letting me minimize. Let me see. It's about 31, I think it is. So it actually come out pretty evenly. The splits are 42 are 5K distance, 27 are 4 to 10 mile distance, 25 are ultra less than 24 hour. So like we're talking 5 to 12 hour, most of those, and 7 are 24 hour. So I have 32 ultra podiums. 47 are first place, 30 are second place, and 23 are third place. And then if you're curious, 25 have cash prizes, 39 had product prizes. So like supplements or race entries or something I kind of received. And 26 are what I call bowling trophies. That is just like, it's just a thing. Like it's a plaque or it's a sword or it's a bigger medal or something. And I think it's like, well, the trophies don't really add any value. It's like, but some of my best prizes are trophies. Like I have a sword from Mythic Race. I have a sword from Midwest Mayhem 24 hour. I have 2 Thor hammers from a race called Hammer Race where you carried a 10-pound sledgehammer through the whole race doing OCR. And those are just so cool. They're like amazing. And then the Mythic Race team podium is like this preposterously large dragon skull. Like it's obscene. Um, so some of that stuff is really cool. And the product prizes, a lot of times, honestly, those are more valuable a lot of times than the cash prizes. Because sometimes the cash prize is like $100, and then sometimes the product prize is like $300 worth of supplements. And it's like, well, this is much better than $100, in my opinion, because it's most of the stuff I use. So it's kind of a mix of stuff. And then if you're also curious, it's 21 different states. Quick
Right,
link.
they got what 29 more to go there then. No.
Yeah. Yeah, I've looked, I try to spread it out so it's not all in the same area. But convenience, travel costs, and then there are some states that I don't think even have OCR. Like I don't know about like North Dakota, right, or
I don't know, your
Idaho.
buddy who was with us is trying to get you to move to South Dakota, so
Yeah. Yeah,
Anyway,
that was
I'll let the other guys ask some questions.
no.
I was just going to ask, like, what inspired you to start writing books? I mean, because that to me is super impressive and takes so much attention and dedication and time, obviously. Like, I know I don't know how many books you've written, but I mean, to have them published fully and to be able to sell them, like, I mean, that's super impressive.
Yeah, I'd say the thing that inspired me was people kept asking for my advice on fitness. So like I would type things out to people and send it to them, and then they'd ask more questions. I'd type something out and send it to them. And like I think it was laziness, to be honest with you. Like I was tired of telling people the same thing over and over again. And I was just like, well, I'll just write a book and then you can just buy the book. And then once you read the book, then we can have a discussion onto some higher level stuff if you still have questions. So that was kind of the initial moment that spurred it. And I I I mean, just like running ultras, I generally think anything is possible if you put in enough work. So that's kind of how it started. I started as a book on endurance and strength training, basically like a hybrid fitness book. But hybrid fitness wasn't a thing in 2014. So no publishers wanted that, but OCR was an emerging thing. And I thought my training plan could be adapted to OCR really easily. And I just kind of started getting involved. So I kind of pivoted over to that. Did some OCRs, found out I was really good at it. I love the sport, love the community, and it kind of rolled from there. And then you make a little bit of money, but then other benefits come. So sponsors started taking care of stuff. And then, in some of my other books, I reached out to some companies and I was like, hey, if you want your product in this book, if you want to give me a free one, I'd be more than happy to put it in my book. Assuming it's a good enough product. And so I got some free product from that, and it all kind of just snowballed from there. And I thought I was going to write one and can be completely done, because after I published the first one, I was like, well, I don't have anything else to say. And then the more I started thinking about it, the more I was like, well, I could write a book on this, or I could write a book on this. And then it kind of, it opened other doors and opened other ideas. And I'm at 8 at this point, and I'm kind of done writing fitness books. I've got 3 in the works that are kind of like fighting / self-defense focused. So I try to put out one a year, with the hoping that like one of them will hit it real big, and then it'll just trickle down and people will buy all the other ones, and it doesn't quite work. Hasn't quite panned out exactly that well. But it's a steady source of income that takes care of my coffee habit for each month. That's about it.
There you go. Yeah, no, that's super impressive, and it's cool that you're writing some more books and got some more coming out. It just shows how dedicated you are to that craft. So yeah,
I find it easy. My job in the Army, in the later half of my career, involved sitting at a computer a lot, and I generally think the Army is not very difficult. So if you're efficient, you can take care of your work and then work on other stuff. And if you're introverted, which I tend to be at work, like I will, you can leave me alone at my computer and I will just sit there and type all day and like drink some coffee or an energy drink and not go to lunch. I'll just eat at my desk and I'll just type for like 6 hours straight, and it doesn't bother me. So, yeah.
nice. That takes a lot of focus.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When I find something I think is interesting or important, I do not have a problem focusing on it. When it was like subjects in school that I was had to take because that was my what my major required me to take. That was a different story. And I think again with ultra running, the ability to focus for 12 hours while running, I feel like some of that transfers over to other parts of my life. I don't know how if you guys feel about that, but for me it works.
Yeah, no, I totally feel the same way. You can definitely handle a lot more difficult situations outside of fitness, after you've put your body through it in the sphere of fitness.
Yeah, wrapping it up.
I can say like your book on endurance, right? I think I read that last 2 years ago.
Yeah,
I think when that came out, right? I mean, that was really good. It was a lot of like, I don't want to say like stuff repeated, but there's a lot of stuff that's kind of those common themes, right? How to get through a lot of stuff. And you had a good, interesting spin on a lot of like those, just your little mantras, how you handle stuff. And it was kind of cool to see. I think I've thrown a couple of those into my just mental toughness routine.
awesome.
And I do remember my question now, and it was, Ryan asked, what was your most memorable like podium? It's like, so my question was, what was like the hardest, like most grueling podium, like for the ultra distance, right? We talked about that a little bit earlier about, just pushing through that pain cave and trying to keep going when your body just wants to shut down.
Yeah, the most of the 12-hour toughest have been, 12 hours is pretty bad. Those have all been pretty bad. The For me, a lot of honestly, I feel like the hardest part is pre-race. Just the amount of like, I just put a lot of I put a lot of stress on myself to perform, and I feel like one of the hard things is like again, no one cares more about my results than me, right? Like I could have a bad race, and people would be like, "Yeah, whatever, he had a bad race." But like for me, that would upset me a lot. So anytime I go into these ultra races, I'm always like, I don't want to like air quotes here tarnish my legacy. We all know like everyone has a bad race; it's not a big deal. But for me, I just all the 12-hour toughest, I've put a lot of pressure to perform, and every time we go out there, I have to dig to a place that I don't like going. It is not pleasant to be able to kind of pull whatever little energy you have left out. And all the 12-hour toughest podiums were very painful. That Philly one is the one that kind of stands out the most recently. And I think a lot of the times I beat a lot of the guys I beat at toughest are they're physically better runners than me, and I would say better athletes than me. I think I was just able to push a little deeper on those days.
Yeah,
Just knowing you,
that's the key.
yeah, I say just knowing you, like before the toughest, I always see you just like laying in the grass in front of your tent, just relaxing, calm as can be. So I would have never guessed you were that like stressed. I know I am. I'm a complete nutcase before races, and I just own it. But yeah, you're just like, I always look over, I'm like, I'm gonna have to go race against him, and he's just over there like relaxing, calm. And I'm like freaking out to load bottles or change nutrition or shoes or socks or something, and you're just there ready to go.
So my thought process is every step I take before a 12-hour, 24-hour, that's one less step I can take in the race. So I try not to move at all. Like at all. Like I will just lay still and be like any sort of energy expenditure now is going to cost me at some point in the race. So I try to minimize walking, to the point where it's probably I don't think it's making that much of a difference, but yeah, I just try to minimize any extraneous movement and try to lower my heart rate and be like, just breathe and relax and yeah, and then you just go do it. Once the course starts and I feel like I'm comfortable once all the obstacles open. I was talking to, I think, Ryan about this. I don't like when a lot of the obstacles are open. I feel like there's an impending unknown. And then once I know what the course looks like, once I know kind of where my competition is, and once I know all the obstacles, how I'm going to deal with them and how many times I'm going to get shocked when I go through EST, then I can relax and then I just kind of get into the flow and start pushing.
I think it is funny though, before a race, we're talking about, Miko's talking about you being, relaxed and being in the zone there. You're talking about not expending energy. However, you are there waiting for a lot of people to come over you to get their Blake mitts. So there's a lot of people in the community who will shout you out and thank you for that.
Yeah. Yeah, it helps fund some of the travel, you know. So and it saves everyone money too, right? Like they don't have to wait 3 weeks to get them from Australia, and it does you know they don't have to pay for Australian shipping. Um, the first time I started helping Deanna out, it was it was stressful for me because Deanna's like, "Hey, just go ahead and buy like $4,000 worth of mittens from me," and I was like, "Yeah, about that." So like I the first time I did it, I was like to my wife, I was like, "Just so you know, we're about to spend $4,000 on effing mittens," and she's like, "What?" It's like I'm pretty sure we're gonna sell them. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure. So that was kind of a scary decision, but it's panned out pretty well. So
On behalf of the community, we thank you and your
yeah,
wife for doing that.
I'd say the one thing I think kind of looking at comparing to some other athletes that I find I don't want to say impressive, but something that's more complicated than I think people realize is injuries, right? Like so I've stayed injury free generally for about the last decade from racing. The only serious injury I had was I tore my pec doing weighted dips in the off season one year, and I didn't even. I mean, I ran I think an ultra 2 weeks later because my chest doesn't affect how I run, and it was a training ultra, so it was a 50K. It wasn't. I wasn't pushing the pace or anything. And then I think 4 weeks after I tore it, I did a 4-man relay with the 24-hour terrain race event. And for that one, I just told them, I was like, "Hey, you got to let me do the speed leg because I don't know what my chest is doing, and I don't want like more of my muscle to rip away." So, I train through a lot of injuries. When things hurt, I just tend to ignore them. I don't know if that's good advice, but that's what I do, and generally it seems to work out. So
Spoken like a true ultra runner.
yeah, I think the one thing I've done that uh I think the thing that saved me is one I've done a lot of cross training over the years where like I before I got involved in OCR I did strength sports for a couple months, and then I would do ultra running for a couple months, and then I do triathlon for a couple months, and then I'd switch back to strength sports. um so I think that saved me. And then the other big thing I do is after World's Toughest, I stop running between November and typically January 1st. I don't run a single step. I just hard stop. Um, and I think that has allowed a lot of the injuries to heal. And then I'd say the last part is I think my nutrition. So when I do start getting nagging aches or injuries, I think because I generally eat healthy, I think my body tends to repair faster than most people. Maybe maybe I made that up. Maybe that there's no science backing that up. But that's what I tell myself. And again, it seems to work. So
Yeah, eating healthy is key for longevity in this sport. I know when we're out there doing these long 12, 24-hour races, I mean, you can kind of consume whatever you want. And I mean, sometimes the bad things, especially towards the end of a WTM, generally seem to help your body out. But as far as going through training blocks and making sure you're eating healthy and staying on top of your nutrition and vitamins and all that, I mean, it's that's how you're going to last so long throughout the sport.
yeah. During World's Toughest and Toughest, I usually drink Perpetuum, the fat carb protein blend, and I think that is one of the reasons I tend to bounce back faster. Most toughest, because I'm taking protein in mid race, so I think my body is one, it's not catabolizing the muscle tissue for fuel, and two, because I'm consuming protein in the middle of the race, it starts repairing stuff basically as soon as it can. Um, I don't know. That logically that makes sense to me. So and I've done races where I've podiumed at of like podiumed at the toughest, and then like a week later podiumed at like a smaller local race, like 5K type distance. So
Yeah,
It makes sense.
that's a quick bounce back.
yeah, and I don't feel good. Like I feel like absolute trash at the 5K. I don't recommend that. That's not a good idea. But and more often than not, it backfires. More often than not, my heart rate's super high and I blow up, and just hope the level of competition isn't as high. But you know, it pans out sometimes. So
Yeah, I just lived that in the past month with 3 different races. It's amazing, your body can feel like crap, and then you show up on race day after you just did a long race, a week or two before, and sometimes you go out and you feel really good.
Yeah. Human body's crazy. I think mental just plays, and you guys I'm sure agree, like mental just plays a huge part in your physical performance. During our 12-hour toughest, um the other teams were closer to us than we were expecting. The first couple of laps that went by, they were close. And when it was my turn to run my first single lap, I did not come to my 100th podium to like make it a close race. Like I am here to crush some souls. And I went out so hard on my first lap. And luckily, I was racing well, and two, the team behind us only had a 3-man team, so essentially he was running his third lap while I was running my second, and that helped really open the gap. And then again, you guys are just so strong and consistent. You got to be. It's going to be hard to keep up with the four of us. So
Yeah.
we pulled away slowly throughout the night from that point forward.
Yeah, then we ended up lapping the second place team, which was kind of surprising.
Yeah, that was surprising. I was not quite expecting that on the last lap, but it was nice. It allowed us to kind of take it nice and easy into the finish. So
Yeah.
Yeah, but overall, like I was trying to do the math on it. Our lap times were very consistent. Even that last lap was still like an hour 4 or something. So it was
really that
right in
fast?
line. Yeah, I kind of went back. I'm like, we were taking it kind of easy. I mean, we were moving and not like in a hurry, but we still weren't doing too bad.
Yeah, and that's why I picked you guys, because I know you guys are going to be consistent, and that's really important to me. I'd rather have someone who's a little bit slower, but I know what I'm getting, rather than someone who's like, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna be super fast, but then you don't know if my legs will start cramping, in 2 laps. Like I'd rather have someone who's like, yeah, this guy's just he's just gonna consistently grind it out, which is again why you guys were my go-to. So
Well, we appreciate it. It was a good time for sure.
Yeah, it means a lot coming from you.
no, thank you,
Definitely an honor. And are we
yeah.
able? So I got one more question for you, Evan.
Okay.
If this is the right time for it. So 100 podiums. Is there going to be 101 out there? You asked
Yeah.
us our race. You asked us our race schedules for the future. What do you got?
Yeah, there'll be 101. There won't be. We're not going to talk about the next 100 because there's not going to be another 100. But yeah, I got one more race on the calendar in the Midwest, maybe 2. City Challenge, Kansas City, and then I think I might go up for Highlander Assault. Just another Midwest race I haven't done. And then when I move to Boston, I'll hit up a bunch of the local races up there, Boulder Dash, and a lot of the other like New England specific stuff. Maybe I'll throw in a Spartan or two now that it's not 7+ hours away, because the closest Spartan race for driving for me is 7+ hours. So, yeah, so I'll still race a little bit. I'm just gonna step back substantially now that I have the goal I really wanted to get after, and I'll just kind of, be a little more picky and choosy, and yeah, just kind of relax a
So
little
those
bit.
so those races you just mentioned, none of them included WTM. What's up with that?
Yeah, I think I'm done racing individual WTM. The last 2 years for toughest, for Infinity, for World's Toughest, I honestly, I know this sounds weird, like I was not having a good time. Like at any point, I just wasn't having fun. But again, it was more of a discipline thing. I do it because I don't know, it's because it's who I am. It was like you said you were gonna do this, and yes, you stopped having fun a year ago, but you're still doing it because you said you were gonna do it. And again, I didn't. There's no like giant public declaration. It's just something I decided. I don't like being a hypocrite, even if it's only to myself. And so I raced those and did well. And now I just had a really, again, not Tough Mudder did nothing wrong. I've just been racing World's Toughest and Toughest Mudders since the first year they did Toughest Mudder in 2017. I've been racing World's Toughest since 2014. My body is not as strong as it used to. I'm still doing pretty good, but I feel like I'm on the top of the backside of the bell-shaped fitness curve here. I don't really want to ride it down, and I think I might start doing more media stuff for World's Toughest. So you will likely see me there, pending availability of my school schedule. I will likely be in a media role, but given the right opportunity, I could be persuaded to come back on a team. That's probably about it, though. So
we got to find you 3 other guys.
Don't look too hard. I'm not that interested. But yeah, I could be persuaded. So all right. Let's start wrapping it up. Final thoughts, any final shout outs you want to give? Start off with Miko.
Yeah, I got nothing besides congratulations, Evan. It's a hell of an achievement, man.
Thanks for being a part of it multiple times. So Ryan, any final shout outs you want to give? Friends, family, sponsors, final thoughts?
Sure. So shout out to your dad being in our pit there. I know I see him at all the big races, always there helping you out, and he was there helping us all out. So shout out to him. I know earlier Miko was talking about that. We unfortunately, because the way it's set up, we don't have the whole team thing going, but tell people who I'd also consider part of our team, those guys who's helping everyone out there, our man of Mudderhorn, David, and of course Francis and Deanna hanging out at the top of Everest. I mean, when those people are out there doing that stuff, I mean, we're obviously all friends with them. Awesome. So shout out to them and everyone else who always helps out during the toughest and WTM, hang out the obstacles and help us over them all. And to all the volunteers out there, of course. And shout out to the individuals who got the 50 miles, John, Joe, Mike, and Matt. I mean, those guys crushed it. I mean, I know they probably would have all loved having us, compete with them. And then I know we focused on your 100 podiums, and that's something that didn't come up. And I know we don't want to go on this tangent, but I'll shout it out with all the charity events you've done over the time during your 100 podium streak there. So, those are always cool to follow through your podcast and the others, so yeah.
Appreciate it. Much appreciated, Ryan. Christian.
Well, I was also going to say shout out to your dad. That's the first time I've ever met your dad, I believe. And he stayed awake pretty much all night long, just sat there and helped you out and anything we needed. And I don't know how many cans of rain he consumed, but I felt like he took like a couple cases worth throughout the night. And
I think he only had one, but we did stock up. My house has a pretty good supply at this point. So thank you, Tough Mudder.
Nice. Every time I saw him, he's like, "Hey, you guys want some more rain?" How many of these have you consumed already? He was over there twacked out on energy all night, which is awesome to see. But yeah, no, and I appreciate you guys. It's always great to race with a good group of guys that have similar goals and athletic abilities. And we all went out there and knew what we had to do and got it done. And we had a good time doing it. So congrats on your 100th podium. I hope to see you still out there racing some of these races. And if you don't race Worlds, I hope you show up and do your media thing. That'll be cool to see you out there doing that. Just don't get mad at me if I come by and don't talk to you late in the race. I might be a little stuck in my head at that point.
Yeah, no worries. We've all been there.
But yeah, man, great weekend. So
yeah. Well, thank you guys. I'd also give a shout out to my dad. He's been there for, I don't know how many races at this point. Also listens to the podcast, so he'll hear your good comments, which I think is amusing. And again, I'll drop a bunch of links down in the show notes down below if anyone wants to learn more about some of those charity events that Ryan mentioned. My book, Ultra-OCR Man, covers some of them. And then the 2 documentaries, OCR Everest and Ultra-OCR Man, I'll drop those links down below. Feeling good from the good kind of career goal. So I will drop the Ultra-OCR Man link down below. That's free. You do not have to pay for it. If you click the link below, it's an unlisted video on YouTube that I sometimes make available for people. So you can check that out. 24-minute video, and then OCR Everest is a 10-minute video, again done by a professional filmmaker. So pretty cool coverage there. And then someone tell Tough Mudder to bring back Infinite Hero Challenge. That was another charity thing we did, and that was really fun. I've only got to do that for 2 years, but that was a pretty cool event. So
Yeah, don't get me started on that one.
Start writing letters. Everyone start writing
Yeah.
letters. We'll bring it back. I got more time now that I'm semi
Yeah.
OCR retired. So,
I'll have to give Giles a call.
please do. All right, guys. Thanks again for coming on. Head over to teamstrengthspeed.com and check out Obstacle Running Adventures. Just an interview with them, talking a little bit more about 100 podiums. And then I've got a whole bunch of articles coming out on the OCR report. Please check those out. Again, I kind of deep dive into lessons learned that are less Evan specific and more of like, hey, here are some like big concepts I've learned about not only race results, but persistence and happiness, and, you know, how closely your results should be tied to your happiness, and if that even matters. And not only for the elite side, but I have another article about like the open wave side and some of the things I think I've learned that I think everyone should take in as they kind of go through their OCR journey. And then we also when I talked to Mike, I talked a little bit about like, you know, obviously the feeling of accomplishment, but also like sometimes when you hit a big goal, I'm sure you guys have all felt this, where like you hit the goal and then you're like, and now what? You're a little lost. So me and Mike talked about that a little bit. So check out the Obstacle Running Adventures, and we will see all of you, I don't know, in the next podcast. Thanks again, guys.
You.